So I got here some exercises for autumn leaves. These are things that came up in a Zoom lesson I did a few weeks ago, and it hit me that I haven't really done like a workout video. Sometimes I make these workout videos, but I haven't done one for autumn leaves. Autumn leaves is one of the most common tunes to start with when you're learning jazz. Sometimes it's the first tune you learn. So I'm not going to teach you the tune. I'm assuming that you know the tune. This is for those of you who know a little bit of jazz and want to get better at outlining the harmony and the chord changes, because the biggest problem when you're learning jazz, I think, for somebody who's new to jazz, is they haven't developed this ability to outline chord changes. So I have here a few exercises that I used over the years to develop that ability, and then maybe at the end of the video I'll talk about a little bit more of a modern concept that I discovered the other day. So let's get right into it, shall we? The first thing we're going to do is just to play the chords broken. So C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7, E flat major 7, A minor 7 flat 5, D7, G minor. I'm going to play G minor 6 there because I like that sound, the tonic minor. If you play the chords as broken arpeggios, so that's really giving you the harmony, right? I remember when I went to GIT, they had us do this. Something like that. And so playing constant 8 notes, 2-octave arpeggios. I remember I practiced like an idiot, and then I was able to do it for that test, but you know, my thoughts were like, I'm not improvising at all. I'm just playing like classical, what I told my fingers to do, so I'm not improvising. So that exercise is good for technique and all that stuff, but I recommend playing just a few notes and leaving space. I have talked about this. I made a video years ago where I go over this concept of chord tones in depth. So if you want to check that out, and I, in that video, talk about how you can take this concept pretty far. And I also talk about how Mike Stern often does this. I've seen clinics with him when he does this, and he's able to turn this into music. You can totally make more music with these chord tones if you add some variation and start on different notes and play them in different directions and stuff like that. First, I'll play along with my iReal Pro, and you can play along with us, and we'll just play ascending. But then I'll play them descending, and then I'll start add some variation to it. Here's the chord change coming up. I'll play them descending. I'll try to make some variation. play them in different direction. And you don't have to start on the root always, right? Try to start on the notes, like maybe on the, I don't know, the third. You can check out my older video where I talk about this in more depth, and as I think I've said, Mike Stern is really good, and there's lots of videos of him demonstrating how to play chord tones over autumn leaves. You can find them on YouTube, and he really makes it sound like Bach.
I'm just using chord tone. Right now.
There are, however, some problems with this exercise, and one of the biggest, most obvious problems is that you're just playing the basic chord tones. You're not getting any extensions, and you want some extensions, especially on the dominants. You're playing kind of D7, which is not really a hip sound, right? In jazz, you want to add extensions. So there's a way that you can do that, and I'll talk about that later on, but first, we're gonna play Bop Scales. But there's some confusion. What are the chords there at the B section? So it's C minor, F, B flat. And then it's G minor, C, F minor, B flat. And then you could go to A minor 7 flat 5, or you could go to E flat major 7. Those chords are kind of similar, so you can treat them like it doesn't really matter, or it could be the same both. And then some people go to the E flat major 7 after the B flat, and some people go straight to the A split. Right? But if I'm soloing and I'm treating the A minor 7 flat 5 as an E flat major 7, it's gonna sound pretty good. And it's also often G minor, G flat 7 or C7. It's, you know, those chords are up for grabs. However, in the original version of the tune, those chords are not there. So they're kind of messing everything up. They shouldn't really be there. I don't know why. I think it's one of those things that ended up in the real book. That's why everybody plays those chords there. But I've heard some versions, I think it was Stan Getz or something, and they don't play those chords there. All right, sorry, I digress. We're supposed to play Bop Scales, so I'll just play the Bop Scales for you. So for the C minor 7 F7, I'm using a technique called harmonic generalization. I'm treating those two chords as F7. This is also what Barry Harris does, and you find this in early jazz. A lot of times they don't, that two related two chord, they kind of came later. So I'm just thinking F, and if you think about it, F7, so I'm out of tune here. So if I play an F7, chord tone, chord tone, chord tone, chord tone, all I have to do is add a note between chord tone, chord tone, chord tone, chord tone. But now I have to add one more note. So it's going to add a chromatic note between the E flat and the F, so that it's chord tone, passing note, chord tone, passing note, chord tone. Because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to outline the harmony. So if I do this, I'm outlining the harmony. The bop scale is just the next step. Right? I'm still outlining the harmony, I'm just adding more notes. And the reason we're doing this, the main reason we're practicing the previous exercise and this one, is the ability, we need to develop this ability to always know what chord we're on. I find this with students sometimes when they're learning this stuff. If I stop them, they'll play like in the key and everything, the G minor or B flat major, however you want to look at it. But if I stop them, what chord are you on now? They don't know. You have to know always what chord you're on and how the notes you're playing relate to that chord. So if you don't know what the notes you're just using shapes, or that's not really gonna cut it. You have to know what the notes are as well. Some people disagree with this, but I'm really adamant about that. Of course you need to know what the notes are and how the notes relate to the chord you're playing on. So if you find that difficult, what I recommend, go to the piano, do the same exercise at the piano and play the chord, boom, and then do, 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 dee, do, 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 and spell out the notes as you're doing it. Then come back to the guitar and it's gonna really help, I think. And then you do it in other keys at the piano, right? Because if you do it here, we're just moving the same shapes, but that doesn't work with the piano. So if you play another instrument, even better. Also, try to use ear training. Sing out the arpeggios. Practice away from your instrument. This is actually gonna get you there faster than just sitting and memorizing finger shapes and stuff like that. It's not really gonna cut it, even though the shapes are helpful. The guitar is a shape kind of oriented instrument. So yes, we need the shapes, but we also need to know what the notes are. And people always ask me sometimes people ask me, are you thinking about the notes when you're playing? It's like, no, that's not what I mean. It's like when I'm speaking, I'm not thinking about speaking, S-P-E-A, but I definitely know that those are the letters there, but they're in my awareness, right? But I'm not thinking about the letters or words even when I'm speaking, hopefully. I'm just speaking. But in order to get there with this instrument, you have to do these kinds of exercises, in my opinion. Some people say like, yeah, I never practiced this stuff. I've never practiced chord tones, arpeggios, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe you just got lucky and started playing jazz professionally when you were 14. Maybe your parents showed you every standard when you were a kid. I find with people like that say that, they usually have some kind of talent or something. Maybe they have perfect pitch that is enabling them to, if you just play jazz, you're gonna learn somehow. But this process is gonna speed up the process. So the bop scale that I use for the F7 is the F mixo bop. I've added a major 7. For the next 2 bars, I'm gonna use harmonic generalization again. Just think of the first chord. The next thing you need to be aware of with bop scales is that the major chord is a 6 chord, not a major 7. Like, think early jazz. So it's chord tone, passing note, chord tone, passing note. So the passing note is between the 6th and the 5th. Passing note, chord tone, passing tone. And for the dominant going to a minor, I'm gonna use what I call the mixo flat 2 flat 6. D mixo flat 2 flat 6. Some people call it the Phrygian major, Phrygian dominant. 5th mode of G harmonic minor. I like the name mixo flat 2 flat 6 because it's exactly what it is, with an added 7th, so you get the same idea of chord tone, passing tone, chord tone, passing tone. So just play along with the backing track one more time here and you'll hear it again. So I added some stuff there. You could add the arpeggios. Guitar won't stay in tune today. What Charlie Parker always did was like, did that, the pivot. So of course you can start on other notes. You should be able to start on at least the other chord tones. So if I start on the third, it sounds like this. Or you start on the flat 7 or the 6 depending on the chord, and start on the 5th. You can start on the other notes too. So there is this book, I've talked about this book a lot and I've made videos about it, Jazz Line by Jerry Bergonzi. If you want to know about bop scales in detail, this is the best book by far that I've seen on bop scales, but it's called Jazz Lines. So you can play in different directions, right? You can play ascending, descending, you can jump around. You can play superimposed bop scales to make it sound more modern, so you get extensions in there. You could play something called 10-note bop scales where you're adding even more chromaticism. All this stuff is explained in this book. One of the best books, or one of the most important books for my personal jazz improvisation development. Also, this book, Line Games, is very good for how you can add other things to the bop scales. So Line Games by Randy Vincent, which I've also covered in a few lessons. So you know how you can add and stuff like that. Tons of stuff like that in that book. So basically what I'm saying is the bop scales is kind of the same idea as just playing the chord tones. It's just adding more notes, but it's the same thing. We're outlining the harmony. Now Barry Harris does it a little bit different. This is how he would do it. He doesn't call it bop scales, but this is not something that I know for sure that he will do, but it's based on other things I've seen him do on other standards. So he would play like this. So there is a perfect example of where you could add those kind of pivoting. So this is also in this Line Games book, how to do that. Or you can check out the videos by the YouTube channel called, his name is Chris, I think, the YouTube channel, Things I Learned from Barry Harris, where you can find a lot of this stuff. Moving on to the next thing, which is chord tones, but Coltrane type chord tones is what I call it. It's from another Bergonzi book, excellent book, also very important. volume 1 actually, melodic structures. So instead of playing 1, 3, 5, 7 of the chords, you're gonna play like Coltrane do in the beginning of giant steps. 1, 2, 3, 5. So B flat is gonna be like this. E flat. The D7 you have to drop the 9th or the 2nd to a flat 2 because it's a dominant going to a minor chord. And the minor chords is gonna be 1, 3, 4, 5. Then 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 3, 4, flat 5, because it's a minor 7 flat 5, right? So there are no 7ths in these chords. 1, flat 2, 3, 5. So everything sounds out of tune today. Must be the weather. It's actually autumn. So these shapes are easier to kind of manipulate and improvise with, but let's just play them. And I think it's very important. This is just my take on this. By the way, these books, of course, they're saxophone-oriented books, right? So none of the books I mentioned have any tabs or anything like that. Tabs would be completely useless here, right? Because it's all about knowing what the notes are and how they relate to the chord and everything. So I don't know why you would use tabs, really. But if I just play them ascending, it's gonna sound like this. Of course, you could play it higher, any octave. I was gonna say that it's the beginning of giant steps, right? So what I'm doing is I'm playing, this is also, I was just gonna say that before, I use consistent kind of fingering. So I play 2 notes on a string and 2 notes on the next string. And if I do that, I try to stick to that. 2 notes, 2 notes. It's easier for me if I get confused if I mix it up. You could play these shapes in different ways. You could play 1, 2, 1. I do that too, but I don't mix them up. It's easier to do what I'm gonna do now. I'm just gonna try to play them in different directions, and you know, you could play, or. So this book goes through all the combinations. So something like, I don't know, something like this. Add some rhythm. Now I'm trying to kind of imply other harmonies. technique to imply other kind of chord changes. But the main thing I want you to do is to be able to... Or you don't have to play every note. You can play 3 notes, 2 notes of the shape, or 0 notes. Are you hearing the chord change? Hopefully you can hear the chords go by. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually improvising, because this is another thing that comes up, right? Like, we're not improvising. Remember I said earlier the GIT? All I can do, if I can, is to play that thing, and as soon as I mess up, I'm kind of screwed. Here I can make music. You hear the motifs, right? So that was the Coltrane Patterns. I have made videos about that too, and I think I did it on Blues for Alice years ago. He also takes this concept in the book here, melodic structures. He takes it pretty far. He does superimposed, he does the inversions of these patterns, and yeah, it's just a whole bunch of stuff. One more thing before I get into a little bit more of a modern concept. A problem with these chords that we played in the beginning is that all those shapes, they don't give you the extensions of every chord, and they also don't really necessarily sound the best. This was a thing that Scott Henderson was very big on when I studied with him, that you play the arpeggios that sound good. So the major 7 he thought sounds good. It's a nice melodic structure, and he's also a fan of the minor 7 flat 5. But maybe the dominant is not the best sound. So you feel free to disagree with this. This is just Scott Henderson's take. So he finds a way to play the major 7 over the C minor, right? If I have C minor, I can play E flat major 7, which is actually gives me the 9th, and it doesn't give me the root. So that's very nice that you don't have the root in there, but the 9th instead. It's also the first note. You kind of replace the root with the 9th when you're writing 4-part harmony for big band or whatever. If you do the same with the F7, you get an A minor 7 flat 5. The A minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio works really great over that F7. It doesn't give you an altered chord, but it sounds great. So if I do that over those 2 chords and then over the B flat major 7, it's already a major 7, so I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to play, and then I could play A minor 7 flat 5 over here. But we're actually not going to do that. We're going to use a technique similar to this. It's called piano voicings. So over the C minor, I'm going to play E flat major 7. So like an E flat major 7 over the C gives you a C minor 9. So just imagine this is this hand on the piano, and that's the other hand. What piano players do is they just drop this note, the B flat to an A, and they get a E flat major 7 flat 5. over the F, which gives me an F13 sound. Then I'm gonna play major 7, major 7, and then here I'm gonna play the same voicing for the A. Gonna move it up for the D, so it's like a G flat, major 7 flat 5 over D, which gives me an altered chord, and then B flat major 7 flat 5 over G. Let's slow it down a little bit here so you get the sound. I'm gonna remove the piano and I'm gonna loop this first section. So E flat major 7 flat 5, B flat major 7 flat 5, move it up, move that up. Those are the chords, and that's arpeggios. So like this. So it gives you more extension. So flat 5. So it's a major 7 flat 5 arpeggio, a little bit tricky to find good fingerings. So it's something you need to work on if you haven't. As a guitar player, you really need to work on those major 7 flat 5 arpeggios because it's an important ingredient in jazz. And the tune to work on, of course, is Inner Urge, Joe Henderson. And I have made a video about that tune as well. All right, so those were the exercises that I did in that lesson. We talked about those exercises, and it's a good, if you work on that, it's going to give you a whole lot of stuff. And if you master these exercises, it's going to give you a solid kind of foundation. Then ultimately, of course, you want to forget about all this stuff and just play. You want to transcribe solos and listen to many versions of the tune. You want to try some licks, 2-5-1 licks, both major and minor 2-5-1 licks. But I'll leave you with a little thing I found on YouTube, a lesson with Kurt Rosenwinkel. He's like releasing, I think, snippets from his videos, which I think you can order from his website or the Hardcore. He talks about how he treats 2-5s, and I find this fascinating. So if you have a 2-5-1 in B flat, which you have, that's kind of a lame sound. It doesn't sound like the modern players. So what you can do, right, because the B flat is a tonic, the G minor is also a tonic sound. So you can, it's a deceptive cadence, right? So instead of going to B flat, I'm going to G minor. Okay. It's also the B flat major 6 chord, right? In inversion of it. But what he'll do, maybe he'll think G minor major 7. And the inversions of these are just inversions of G minor major 7. You get these, it sounds like a B flat major 7 sharp 5 chord, but it's actually a G minor. So if I use those sounds, and here it's just G minor major 7. even more, if you want to stretch it even more, you can think like, you know, classical music. So C minor, I'm playing triads, and going to G minor, but a D7 over G, like Bach. If you think like that, you can make it sound very different. D7. So by using kind of ancient harmony, like kind of classical, you can make it sound modern because it sounds like you're playing major 7 sharp 5 stuff like that, but you're just thinking a cadence, right? So I hope that made some sense, and that was my little autumn leaves lesson. I'll link to all my other autumn leaves lessons. I have tons of autumn leaves lessons in in my YouTube video history. So I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.